Hi, I'm Ian.
And I'm Jason.
And this is Ghosts and Bears, the only podcast where we bring you the actual ghost stories
With the actual history.
in the actual place. On this episode of Ghosts and Bears, we're off to Vancouver, and we're going to be checking out a peripheral vision ghost and talking about do ghosts hang around after their homes are gone, coming up on Ghosts and Bears.
Hi.
Hello.
And welcome back.
Yes, we are glad to be back. We know it's a little longer than usual, but we are definitely back now.
Yeah, it's nice. We were, actually, in fact, we were on our way to California for ghost stories, and that was last weekend, and 2 weekends ago.
2 weekends ago.
Last weekend we were up Island, and
Right.
trying to get our place ready, because we were not sure if we were going to list it or...
Love it or list it.
Yeah, love it or list it. But yeah, 2 weekends ago, we were heading on our way to California for ghost stories.
Oh, right,
And-
because we got married.
oh my gosh, yes. Yeah, we got married, so that's cool.
We surprised Jason's mom.
Yeah, we gave her 5 minutes notification before
Yeah.
the commissioner
Yeah.
showed up. So yeah, we kept it on the down low, and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, we're getting married in 5 minutes.
We had two witnesses. It
Yep.
was 10 minutes, and we all went out for burritos afterwards. It was
Yep.
perfect.
Simple, quick, done.
Probably the best wedding I've ever been to.
No mucking about. And
So then, Jason said, why don't we head to Mount Shasta
yeah.
on our kind of our mini honeymoon? And so we headed out. And what happened, Jay?
Oh my gosh. And, well, I would say about 10% of Interstate 5 was shut down, and
We got through Portland,
yeah, Portland was bad, obviously.
and you
a
said,
storm
why don't you
hit
call the
that.
hotel and just make sure there's room for us
Yeah.
in Mount Shasta? So I gave them a call, and the lovely
Yeah, because
lady...
Ian was happy to just show up, and I'm like, maybe you should just phone.
Yeah, so the lovely lady said, oh, well, we only have 3 rooms left. Are you stuck? And I went, what? What do you mean stuck? And she goes, well, have you dug yourself out? And I'm like, what? What are you... What? I don't even know what you're talking about. She goes, wait, are you not down here? And I said, no, we're in Portland. We're heading towards you. She goes, no, don't come here. Don't come here.
It was shut down.
Completely.
So because obviously this just happened.
Figured we'd maybe head to the Oregon coast.
Yeah, the Oregon coast, and then head south from there, because Pacific Coast Highway is usually pretty clear.
Right. Close to the water, so it's warmer.
And no. So we were at Salem heading towards the Pacific Coast Highway, because we really wanted to get some stories in California.
Right.
Anyways, no. The temperature was 5 degrees to 2 to 5 degrees Celsius.
Yeah.
But the problem was that snowstorm really created black ice.
You know, all through to get to the coast from like Salem or Portland, you basically have to go through mountain passes.
Yeah, it's small.
Yeah,
mountain
but
passes.
but they're still there.
Yeah, and we were heading down a hill, and the Prius's ABS engaged immediately, and these are good tires that are on it. So I was a little surprised, which means that the ice had a layer of slick water on it.
Well, and not only that, according to Google Maps, there was an accident up ahead.
Yeah, there was an accident.
And we very quickly came across a long line of cars.
And in a couple of minutes, suddenly, the Pacific Coast Highway was closed.
Yeah.
So, you know what? Ian phoned the hotel that we booked with in...
Was it Seaside?
South Oregon.
Oh,
I don't know. It was South Oregon, just on the border.
Yeah.
And he said, no, we're not coming. The highway's just got an accident, and then now it's also shut down. She's like, no problem. So we boogied back to Salem.
And we stayed in Salem. Now, I don't know if our listeners know about Salem, Oregon. I certainly didn't. What a beautiful town.
Yeah, it's stunning. There's
Beautiful
some
homes.
houses.
The state legislature's there.
Yeah, well, it would be the state
house?
I don't know.
What do they call it?
No, because it's not a legislature, I don't think. That's Canadian.
Oh. Are you sure?
I don't know.
Okay, our American listeners, what is your state capitol building called? That's what
it's the Capitol. I think it's called the Capitol.
The Capitol building?
Yeah, with a TOL. I'm pretty sure that was what it was, because I'm sure that was the street that it was right near. capital.
Oh, okay.
Remember?
Okay.
Yeah, and so we drove by that, and we were wowed. We were wowed by the architecture. We were wowed by the houses.
What a great city. We're really impressed.
Yeah, and it was clear that Portland, like going back to Portland, it was clear Portland was hit hard with that storm.
Yeah, there were still cars pulled over on the side of the road.
Yes, yeah, and there were slick areas on I-5 too.
Yeah.
So we pulled through Portland gently, and pretty much everything to Salem was dry.
Yep.
And Salem itself was dry.
Yep.
And it looks like we just missed another storm.
Pretty much.
Oh my gosh.
So then we got out of there. We went to the coast.
Yes.
We went to our main true love, which is cheese.
Tillamook
cheese.
Creamery.
And we had lunch in Tillamook and had a lovely time. And then we drove down the coastal road.
Yeah.
Which was also very lovely.
We drove up to Astoria, which is where one of my old 80s favorite films was filmed.
Johnny Five Alive.
Johnny Five Alive.
What was the movie actually called?
That's Short Circuit.
Short Circuit.
Yes.
My brother and I remember we rented that from a video store, and I think my brother and I watched it like 9 times before it had to go back. Like we went absolutely mental for it.
Well, Short Circuit was ahead of its time.
It really was.
It was so cool. You know, it was probably shocking because here we are, you know, we were probably grade 3 to 6 or something like this.
Yeah.
And you're watching this robot just go through a book, and he's just absorbing knowledge like you wouldn't believe.
Yeah.
And we're just sitting there stunned. I mean, obviously it's hokey now. And yes, a computer can do that infinitely X amount of times over what that was. But watching that, we were just struck.
Was fun. We were
struck in awe.
So it was fun to go to Astoria. We crossed the giant bridge, turned around, came back.
Yeah, and then we went through Astoria we kept going on that highway towards Washington State.
Yeah.
But we wanted to do that highway as opposed to the Washington highway because we could sense the storm was on its way.
Absolutely. And you'd already looked up the thing and it said, big storm coming to hit. So we made it to Tacoma.
Yeah.
Where we rejigged our plans and we went to the Air and Space Museum.
Oh, yeah. The Museum of Flight.
Yes.
Yes. And I love it. They have an SR-71 Blackbird.
They do.
I took a nice photograph of it, and I got a lot of photographs. I haven't looked at them yet.
Right.
So I love it, and we got a membership. So we got our Navigator membership.
We did.
They should be actually arriving any day now.
Yeah. So we went on the Concorde.
Yes.
We went on the Kennedy era Air Force One.
That's correct. And I think if I remember right, that served until 96, didn't it? Was it 96?
No. It ended around 1970. And then there was a different one for the Clinton and
I thought
Obama
it stayed
and Bush.
in service for quite a while.
Not that one.
There was a bit of an overlap.
Yeah. They downgraded it to something else, but yeah. And then
I thought that.
Did we go on the Dreamliner?
Yes.
That was cool.
The 787 Dreamliner. That wasn't there the last time we went to the museum.
It was not. No.
Flight. And holy smokes, what an amazing bird.
Yeah.
Lots of room. It's big.
Yeah, it's really big. And then we just headed up the highway to home.
Yeah.
And we went to that Chinese restaurant.
Yes.
Where we had a meal like we have never had before.
Oh, yeah, in Richmond. Oh, yes.
I looked it up and I was looking for something else entirely, to be honest with you. And then this fancy place came up and it was very different. And we went in and we're like, whoa, high prices. But then we ordered the meal for 2. And
it's well worth it.
Holy cow.
It was several dishes, not terribly large.
That shrimp was the size of my hand.
That one was, yes. But that is a single shrimp. So to our listeners.
One gigantic shrimp, and then underneath it were mushrooms and zucchini.
Yeah. In a sauce.
And it was perched up.
Yeah.
It was really cool.
Yes. I mean, these are
authentic dishes.
Yeah.
These weren't your standard chicken balls and sweet and sour pork.
No, this is proper.
In fact, the waitress was coming over to make sure we were okay all the time.
Oh, yeah. No, we loved it.
Scallops. There's the scallop dish where we had the 2 perfect scallops.
Yes.
There was the amazing chicken rice.
Yeah.
What else was there?
Well, there was the soup.
Oh, at the very beginning, which was really good.
Yeah.
And then at the end was dessert, which was not what you think it would be.
No, it was quite different.
It was sweet red beans.
Yes.
in a broth.
Yes.
And she came over to us as we were finishing up, and she's like, so did you have enough? And we're like,
Oh, yeah.
yeah. Well, she asked, did you get it all, or did you get all? And we're like, well, I think so. Like, I don't remember how many courses we had or how many there were, but I think so. And then she kind of reiterated, and she's like, no, like, did you eat enough?
Yeah.
And we're like, oh, yeah.
Obviously, English was her second language.
Yeah, but obviously we look like people who eat more than that. But it was so great because sometimes, you know, I have Chinese food and I don't feel very well after because it's all deep fried and sugary. This was the opposite of that. It was
exceptional.
It was so good.
It felt like a 5-star restaurant.
I think it actually was.
I believe it was.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
because those chandeliers were exceptional.
Yeah.
And you walk in and these crabs in this tank were immense.
I wouldn't have wanted to tangle with one of those.
Immense crabs. These aren't little nonsense things.
These aren't red lobster crabs, friends. These are real crabs.
They were big. And I think you said one of them was what, $300?
Yeah.
300 or 400?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like it was shocking.
Well, and that table beside us got the Peking duck, and he brought the entire cooked duck out and started carving it for them and slicing it.
Yeah, he sliced it into exceptionally small pieces.
Yeah, thin, very thin.
Like think like I don't know, an exceptional Japanese house where they do things super thin. Yeah, the duck was that thin.
Yeah, it was cool,
and it took him a while to carve that thing up. And
then we just headed for the ferry and came home.
Yeah.
And then, we had to go up to our place in Port Alice because it got painted by the amazing Farrellyn, who'll never listen to this because she doesn't care about what we do. No. But I thought she was just going to paint the walls, but she actually took everything off the walls, repaired all the holes, primed it, painted it. Then she painted all the trim, all the doors, all the ceilings. Like, holy cats, our place is amazing.
The original quote was X, and it was 2.3 times X. And so I was a little shocked when the final bill came in. I'm like, oh, wow. But when we saw it, I mean, she painted the ceilings.
Oh,
she painted the trim. Yeah. She painted everything. She filled all the holes. It looked like a brand new townhouse.
We almost don't want other people in it.
Yeah. And that includes finishing off the tiling and fixing the tiling where it was a little bit worn.
And there were some places with no tiling because it had never gotten done. She handled all of that.
The powder room was completely tiled.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm thrilled
for the price. Absolutely, it was worth it, and it does look new. I said I can live here.
Yeah, absolutely. So we got some great improvements. We took up some new furniture, so it's all ready for the next Airbnb season.
Yeah, there was. Yeah, we that was why we went out. We brought a bunch of new furniture because the stuff that was there was pretty hideous.
It's pretty bad.
It was awful. I mean, it came with it, but if we're gonna gussy it up, we may as well get some really nice oak furniture, stuff that's reliable and easy to maintain, easy to clean.
Yep.
So yeah, we walked in and our mouths basically hit the ground because it's like, is this even the same place?
Yeah, totally.
It was almost exactly the same as our reaction when we bought it sight unseen.
Where we walked in, whoa, we own this?
Yeah. It was so cool.
I know, it was very
cool.
It
was a good fun, and that was our 2 weekends.
Yeah, and now we should, after blathering on about now we're Mr. and Mr. Jason and Ian, we should tell you about our story for this episode. It's kind of an interesting place. It's a place called Mescaleros. Started out as a place called Maxine's. Mm-hmm. And what was it really?
Well, it was a brothel house, wasn't it?
Well, yeah, it was called Maxine's Beauty School.
Right, yes.
And the girls would go, quote unquote, to the school, and it was also, they lived there.
Right.
Which is very handy. And it was right around the time when there was quite a bit of organized crime.
Of course.
In the city.
Like, why wouldn't there be?
And organized crime, as we learned from the Mop Museum in Las Vegas, the organized crime came from Prohibition.
Right.
We had a very brief flirtation with Prohibition here in BC. We didn't do it very well. And I talk about that in the story. Yeah. And Maxine's was really the place where you went to drink, have some fun with the girls. But sometimes things could get out of hand.
Yeah, of course they were. Usually when alcohol is involved and girls, it does get out of hand.
That things go wrong, yeah. So this building...
cell phones aren't here to take photos and videos and put them on Instagram and TikTok. And
Exactly.
No, this is a completely different time period.
Very much so. And this building was built very, very solidly. It's built like a Spanish kind of... a Spanish home, little Spanish church almost. And so when Maxine's closed and that era kind of ended, it had extensive renovations and became Mescaleros, which was very, very, very popular all through the 80s, 90s, and into the early 2000s. Very popular restaurant. It was kind of a high-end Mexican Mediterranean place, but very high-end, as we will discover, because they had their own pastry chef.
Yeah.
And this is cool about this story. This story came from, whenever I interview people for the books, if I'm on my game, I will always say to them, is there anyone else you think I should talk to? And that is where this story came from, because this woman said, actually, yes, you should talk to my sister, Rachel.
Right.
She had this experience in Mescaleros. And I'm like, what's that? It wasn't even on my radar.
Yeah.
And I phoned Rachel and asked her, can we use your story? And she's like, oh, absolutely. And she told me the story. And I'm like, what? The cool thing was, as you'll hear, she only ever saw the woman in her periphery. And she tried to turn her head and look at her. But when she did, she would just disappear and she wouldn't come back.
Yeah.
So it's a really, really neat story. It's a really, really neat building. And as I mentioned in the story coming up, we have another building here in Victoria to talk about, which sort of, kind of captures what's going on with that one. So hopefully you will enjoy this story, and then we'll come back and talk about ghosts. Do they stick around after their building is gone?
Yeah.
Woohoo! All right, we'll be right back. Here we are down at Mescalero Restaurant and Maxine's Beauty School with the beautiful sultry hum of a leaf blower in the background. But that's the way it is. So here we are. This is taken from my book, Vancouver's Most Haunted. And this one is a good one. This was one of those ones I got when I was interviewing someone for the book, and then I made my usual question, if I remember, and I'm smart that day, and I said, is there anyone else you think I should talk to? And she said, actually, yeah, you know what? My sister Rachel would be really good for you to talk to. And turns out Rachel had quite the story. Mescalero, formerly located on the corner of Bidwell and Davie, was a very popular Mediterranean-style restaurant in the West End of Vancouver. At least it was when pastry chef Rachel worked there, alone, in the basement. The building was originally constructed in the 1920s and housed Maxine's beauty school and boarding house. Rumor had it that this was a cover for a discreet brothel frequented by members of the mob and the rich and philandering. It may have had a hand in rum running during British Columbia's brief experience with Prohibition. Turns out we weren't very good at it. We only did it for like 7 years. Another rumor that turned out to be true was that there were secret tunnels under the building. One went to a bathing house on English Bay Beach. Sounds like a perfect rum running spot to me. And the other went to Gabriola Mansion, an infamous house known for its wealth, parties, and all sorts of dodgy shenanigans. As one would expect, the beauty school was quite busy, and not just with women learning how to do hair. In fact, it would appear that most of the students had very little to do with learning beauty techniques, and far more with making the gentlemen visitors happy. Maxine's eventually went out of business and was shut down, and after the building underwent a massive refurbishment, it was the perfect place to open a Spanish-inspired restaurant, as the building itself looked like a small Spanish monastery. People had spoken of the building being haunted by a few spirits, suspected to be former employees of Maxine's. Patrons of the restaurant commented that apparitions of young women could be spotted from time to time. There was the sad story of the young woman who'd been murdered just outside where the women's bathrooms were in the restaurant. People spoke of feeling sad or even frightened there. However, seeing a woman going in and out of the bathroom would not have raised many eyebrows, so people often didn't realize what they were seeing. Rachel, the pastry chef, had heard nothing of these stories when she started working at Mescalero's in 1994. The last thing she was thinking of were ghosts. Rachel's job differed a bit from that of the usual kitchen staff. She worked early in the day when the restaurant was not busy, and she typically worked alone, down in the basement. She had everything she needed down there, a pastry bench, a pantry, the works, so she would usually spend entire days by herself, unless someone intentionally came down to say hi. It was a bit of a shock for Rachel the first time she had a paranormal encounter of her own. She was working hard in the basement, as usual, trying to hit her targets for the day, when out of the corner of her eye she saw a woman with long, dark hair and wearing a blue dress standing just past her left shoulder. Rachel spun around. No one was there, but she knew what she'd seen. Unsure of what to do, she mentioned it to one of the serving staff, Kyle, who is still her best friend to this day. When she told Kyle about the mysterious visitor, he gave her a knowing look. Of course, he told Rachel. She was one of the brothel girls. She ended up getting shibbed by one of her clients, and she died here. After that first encounter, and realizing that the ghost was not interested in hurting her, Rachel was no longer afraid. It seemed that this attitude was all the spectral young lady needed. She appeared often, several times a week, always in the periphery, never full on. Apart from that, she was a full-bodied apparition, always dressed in the blue dress, and always with long, dark hair. This young woman wasn't just interested in popping up behind Rachel. She was seen kicking what looked like a stone around the basement. Another time, she was seen in the pantry, examining the shelves as if to see what was stored there. For Rachel, she simply became part of the basement area, and she never felt scared or threatened by her. Rachel moved on after working there almost a year. Not because of the ghost, she left simply because she'd earned enough experience to further her career. But while Rachel moved on, she never forgot about the ghostly young woman she left behind. Mescalero, Maxine's, is now, sadly, a shell of what it once was. And I mean literally a shell. New condos were built inside 2 of the 4 walls of the old building, and what was once a piece of Vancouver history is now cladding for a condo. Will the story stop now that the building has been gutted, or is the paranormal energy there attached to more than just a building? Perhaps it's tied to the site. This has been known to happen. And energy can be far more tethered to a location than to any structure. Sometimes the haunting can become more intense as the energy does not understand what is going on. At other times, people will simply experience odd emotions or strange feelings when in that shared space. Will the dark-haired young woman appear in the parking garage or in whatever retail establishment happens to open up in the bottom of the building? Will she go in peace now that the site of her death has been demolished? Or will she stick around, tied to the last remnant that is now simply the heritage cladding on a modern building? Will she slowly vanish with nowhere to call her home? This is a great story and a good example of how folding in older urban structures can sometimes have bigger consequences, which we will talk about when we get back into the studio and away from this noisy corner of Vancouver. Thanks for being with me, and we'll be right back.
And welcome back.
Yes.
Hope you liked that story. It was great.
It's a really good one. It's really different.
It is.
And the fact that the peripheral vision thing. And there is I didn't talk about it in the book, but I have talked about it before. It's partly to do with the whole COTEP thing, corner of the eye phenomena.
Yes.
That talks about how, and I've seen this argued both sides, but it's how we had in our evolution, we needed to keep an eye out for predators.
Makes sense, yeah.
And we would see them in our periphery, but in our front vision, it would be devoted more to detail and, but the sides are devoted to movement and other things like that.
That makes sense.
So when you think of that and you think of the story, it kind of makes sense because she could only see this woman in her periphery.
That's right.
She could never see her directly on. And if you think about it, a lot of times people have said, well, I thought I saw something out of the corner of my eye, and then I turned to look and there's nothing there. So I guess I was imagining it. Well, good news. Good news, friends. You probably weren't.
No, it's true. It's like the bump in the night sort of
thing. You know what I mean? The bump in the night scenario where you're like, oh, I thought I heard something.
Explainable, right?
Exactly. But yeah, COTEP, corner of the eye phenomena. Isn't that cool?
That's very cool. And it makes sense. Well, I've seen things out of my the corners out of my eyes. I mean, that thing in the basement of Killarney Drive,
right.
That's how I saw it.
Yeah, was out of the corner.
When it would zoom by me.
Yep. And that makes perfect sense because we have different receptors and different things picking up on the sides than we do on the front.
That's right.
Yeah. Speaking of, I did promise when I told that story back in Vancouver that I had another story for you, and you don't know this story.
No, I'm anxious to hear it.
We would tell this one on the Ghost Walks, and I haven't done it because I don't do I forget what day it is, Tuesday or Wednesday or something. But there is the story of, are you ready?
Yeah.
The Witch of James Bay.
Oh, wow.
So there was a house in James Bay, old, big 3-story mansion.
Well, there's plenty of those.
Yes. And in this house, there was an older woman, and you would see cars pulling up to the house in the backyard. People get out, go up the stairs into the kitchen. A few moments later, they'd come back out, get in their cars, and drive away. Now, modern times, or, doing the job I do, where I work, you would assume drug dealers.
Makes sense.
But it wasn't. Her name was Mrs. Harris. She was a kindergarten teacher. Older lady, been a kindergarten teacher for many, many years. And people would go to her because she was known as the Witch of James Bay.
Oh, interesting.
But she was a good witch. She would help people.
Oh yeah, no.
So people
you can't presuppose that witches are all bad.
No. So she was helping people, love potions, helping them find things, doing little spells and things like this. Now, the other side was there were people who, her brothers and sisters who had all gotten married and had children and gone off, but they would all come back once a year to the old family home, which she still lived in by herself, this massive house her father had built many, many, many years ago. And they would bring their kids. Wow. And the kids all knew that upstairs there was something very odd because they had a brother. I think his name was Jamie. And when World War I happened, Jamie was only 17. He lied about his age, signed up to go to war, went off to war, never came home.
Yeah, my uncle actually did. Or not my uncle, my grandfather.
There you go.
Because I found that out. I realized that afterwards, after he died, that really messed me up. Because if you, I don't remember, we talked about that. When was he born? 24, and he served. You've seen his medals.
Yeah.
The full 5 years, 39 to 45.
Yeah.
And yeah, same difference.
Yeah.
So yeah, he fibbed about his age to get in.
Well, this guy fibbed about his age, and he went overseas, and he never came home.
That's sad.
And the family was devastated, and they kept his room exactly as he'd left it the day he ran away, essentially. Dirty clothes in the hamper, bed partially made. They never touched a thing. And the house was big enough that they could do that. They just locked the door and they left it alone. So sometimes the parents, all the aunts and uncles who were happy to get together, would say, hey, we're going to go out on the town in Victoria. And the children, or her great nephews and nieces, would be babysat by by the aunt, by the witch.
Right.
And so they'd all be playing games, and they would hear noises above their head because the kitchen was right under Jamie's bedroom.
Yeah.
And they would hear noises, and they'd look at each other kind of scared. And their aunt took it all their great aunt took it all in stride. And she'd go, well, it's Uncle Jamie, you silly kids. Like, don't worry about it. Like, as far as she was concerned, he was there.
It makes sense.
She would also make them all go upstairs sometime during that night, pull the key out of her dress, unlock the door, open the door, show the kids, say, don't touch anything, but this is Uncle Jamie's room. Say hi to Uncle Jamie.
Oh, that's cool.
Until one little girl, 8 years old, who actually told John, our boss, the ghost story about what happened to her. She was in the house.
Yeah.
The parents were still away. Everyone had gone to bed, including the aunt. Everyone was asleep. She woke up and she had to go to the bathroom. She was scared to death because to get to the bathroom, you had to go past Uncle Jamie's door.
Right.
So she was absolutely scared out of her mind, was not going to be doing this. No way, no how. But it got to the point where she couldn't fall asleep. She had to go so badly. So she opened her door and she started walking down the hallway. And as she got closer to Uncle Jamie's door, she heard the lock in the door flip. And the door pulled open just ever so slightly. She could hear the creak of the door.
Yeah, I know.
And all she could see was blackness.
Wow.
She ran straight for the bathroom, past his door. She went to the bathroom as fast as she could, scared out of her mind. And she ran all the way up back to her room and got into the room. And she held the door and she's looking down the hallway to see what would happen. Uncle Jamie's door swung shut. And the lock re-engaged. And she told her aunt in the morning, and her aunt said, well, of course, he's not used to people wandering around at night. So
that's intense.
Isn't that intense? So anyway, this lady dies. All the family's like, well, we can't keep this giant house. It doesn't make any sense. So they sold it. Yeah. A developer bought it and was putting up a large condo tower, which is there to this day. But they have a problem. Because on the second story of this condo building, there's one particular condo that is pretty much always up for sale.
Oh, wow.
They can never keep whoever's in there because things move around, doors open and close, and no one could figure out what it was. They're like, how could a brand new condo be haunted? Like, this doesn't make any sense. We just built this building. I believe it was built in the 80s, the late 70s, early 80s. And finally, someone looked into the history of the area and of, what was going on and realized it was the old house of the Witch of James Bay. And most likely it's her brother who's still hanging around. So when we talk about what happens to ghosts when their buildings are gone or their houses are gone or, sometimes they just stay in the space.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I guess if you're unlucky enough to have a haunted condo on a second story, I would not see that coming.
No, of course not.
Not a brand new condo.
No.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah, well, it makes sense because I had a similar experience in my ex's house on Chapman Street in Cook Street Village.
Ooh, do tell.
It has an unusual front room in the upstairs. So there's 2 bedrooms upstairs and then the bathroom and then a hallway.
Right.
It's kind of like 1 bedroom faces the back. There's the hallway. It's a big hallway. It's odd. It's kind of like...
it's a big house. I remember the house.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It's a big house.
1228 Chapman. Anyways, you have at the end, you have the bathroom and then you have the front room.
Yeah.
And in the front room, there was another room that was built onto it.
Right.
And that one, always, I felt something in it all the time.
Really? Like what? Like negative, positive? You're not sure? You're thinking?
Inquisitive.
Oh, okay. Like a child?
No.
Just something that didn't really know what was going on.
Well, I paused there because it wasn't pleased.
Okay. Yeah.
And when my ex and I were sleeping in the guest room upstairs across the hall, because we had an issue in our place on Shelburne when the basement completely flooded after a rainstorm.
Perfect.
It came in that room. And
wow.
that room was at the back. So like we stayed in the back room because that's where the queen size bed was.
Yeah.
Because if you go into the other one, it was a bedroom, but it was converted into more of a sitting television room.
Right.
And then there in that front addition, it was just this weird U-shaped room that had a small single bed in the far corner. And I that's where the entity always was.
I wonder if that added room at one point was like an outdoor porch, an upper level balcony kind of thing. And at some point someone's enclosed
it. Yes, because the original room, the original front room, you can tell that was the original windows of the house.
Right.
And then you had this funny U-shaped room that was added on.
It's a porch,
and, yes, and that had double glazing windows. Right. The original ones were leaded glass, single pane.
That makes sense.
And that inner room was a single leaded pane. And it's in the front U-shaped room where I always felt this thing. And I guess now that I think about it, maybe that's why. They're just like, why did you muck with this house?
Yeah.
Why would you enclose this?
Yeah.
But when it came into the back room while we were sleeping, oh my gosh. When you said that door was black, I've only experienced that twice.
Yeah.
Remember the once in my bedroom in Killarney where the room just went pitch completely black.
Yeah.
Like I literally watched the black. Oh, and I guess down here to a certain extent downstairs.
Oh yeah, where it got real dark.
And I showed you those pictures where you could only see the light on the ceiling.
Yeah.
And then that room, the back room went black.
Wow.
Oh man, I was not happy.
It's interesting it's on Chapman Street because that's where I had that experience. And remember I told you about that house I went and looked at?
Yes.
There was
up the block.
Up the block.
Towards Cook Street.
I'll tell our listeners because it was pretty intense. It was house shopping, and that part of town has all the old houses. And this was a very old house. It was originally what they would call a four-square house. So you would go in the front door, and it was more like a cottage originally. The front room would have been the living room, the side room, the bedroom, the back room, the kitchen, the other back room, the bathroom. And that's how it would have been separated. Now, over the years, of course, it being a fancy part of town, they had fancied this up. They'd stuck on a huge addition. So there was now like a spa bathroom and a giant extension to the kitchen. But the original kitchen was still there. And I was in the house. We were looking at the house. And it was... I was feeling very anxious in there. And I didn't know why. And at one point, I started drumming my fingers on the counter, which is very unlike me. That's not something I would do.
It's not something you would do.
And I was getting very, very anxious. And I looked at the realtor and I said, something's not right here. Anyway, he shook his head no. He's like, yeah, no, something's not right. And
interesting, because that's less than a block away from him.
I know. So as I'm there, I kind of dropped my guard. You know, I talk about my spidey sense. So I dropped my guard a bit to let in whatever it was I was feeling. Because by then I realized, oh, I'm not nervous. Something's nervous and I'm feeling it. And it was right away, I got a picture in my head of a woman and she was like 1910, I'm thinking, the Gibson girl style hairstyle where it's kind of poofed up in a big bun.
Yeah.
And she had puffy sleeves, long blouse, to the floor length skirt.
Makes sense.
And she is standing just a little away from me, and she is wringing her hands like she's absolutely coming apart. And she's looking around nervously, and she's incredibly upset. And it suddenly dawned on me, she wasn't even aware that there was an addition to her house. All she knew was that strangers were in her house, and she didn't know why.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, I can't live here.
No.
I mean, bless her heart, she's there, but I couldn't live with that level of tension all the time. So it was so clear, and she's looking around. She wasn't looking right at us. She wasn't even aware we, like, as people were there. She knew something was there. Almost like, you know the movie The Others?
Yes.
It was almost like that. So they
Yeah,
knew
yeah, yeah,
something was wrong, but they didn't know what. And
That makes sense.
we left the house, and I remember looking at the foundations of the house afterwards, and believe it or not, in this day and age, that house was a wooden house built on the ground directly. There was no foundation.
Bad design.
I know. But it was what you would have done if you didn't have a lot of money. You couldn't have afforded a foundation. Right. You built your house. So gorgeous little house. Like what they'd done with it was really nice. But that was a pretty profound moment for me. I've only ever had it twice looking for houses. And Lord knows I've looked at enough houses over the years where I've been house shopping and walked into a house and gone, oh, no. And that was definitely one of them. But it's interesting that both those houses are on the same street.
Well, there's a lot of history there.
A lot of history.
And that used to be, if I remember right, a garbage dump.
Right. It was the very edge of town.
Yeah. So that's why a lot of those houses sag.
And the street is a nightmare.
It is. Yeah. I didn't buy the house because just the sheer amount of upkeep.
Yeah.
Just to keep it looking pristine, I figured it was $15,000 on average a year.
Anytime you buy an older home, you aren't the owner. You are the caretaker.
And this house is too tall. So for our listeners, oh, you're lazy, paint your own house. No, this house has extremely high peaks. It's 3 stories and it's got the cedar shakes. Yeah. It has the ornate little things. No, I'm not kidding. And this is back in 2016 when I was considering buying this place. And I looked at the cost, and before you could put a stake on the table, it's $15,000 a year in upkeep. It's just one of those charmers. And a rich person bought it, and it's running into the ground.
Well, that's because
they can't afford it.
The taxes in Victoria.
Yeah.
I lived very close to there on Moss Street, and the taxes were crippling. Yeah. It was unbelievable.
My grandmother had to pay 2 times the taxes because her house
was just 2 up there.
Lots. Yeah, it was a huge mansion that spanned 2 city lots. So she immediately had to pay twice the taxes of any of you guys.
Insane.
I love that house, but now it was rubbled, and now there's 2 immense European
concrete
square
boxes.
Blocks on where it used to stand.
Nice dentist's office, man. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, pretty ugly.
But there was activity in her house.
I believe it.
In the dungeon. That's what she called it. She called it the dungeon downstairs.
Interesting.
Yeah, I didn't mind going to the dungeon on occasion, but in the one corner, I would never go.
And what was down there? What was it?
Oh, it was mostly for storage.
Oh, okay. So it was literally just a basic basement.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because it was 6,000 square feet.
Well, that was
so you don't need 12,000 square feet.
Well, you might.
It was. Yeah. She liked to think of it as a rancher style. So huge, massive.
I love the stories of your grandmother's house because talk about impractical. She had basically a kitchen for a maid.
Yeah,
it was a teeny tiny kitchen.
It was a galley kitchen
with a maid's room off of the kitchen.
Correct, that is correct.
And it was essentially a 1-bedroom house.
It was a 1-bedroom house. 6,000 square foot.
A 1-bedroom, 6,000 square foot house. I love that.
But it had one heck of a living room to entertain.
Oh, I'm sure it did.
And an immense dining room.
It was essentially just a party house.
Well, that was the irony. My dad hated that house. He hated it. She's like, oh, one day you'll inherit. And he's like, I never want to inherit this house just because the amount of upkeep to keep it up.
I can't imagine.
Like she had to replace a beam above the entry door.
Yeah.
It was $40,000.
Why?
Because it was this ornate style beam and it had to be heavy duty. And so it was $40,000.
Like it was a fancy beam or
yes.
some kind of, wow.
Yeah. No, my dad would never. He's like, I will never live in this house. No,
can't really blame him. I'm not gonna lie.
Well, it was seriously impractical. The amount of hallways in that house, you could create a house.
Right.
I'm not kidding.
That's so
the main entryway, the huge entryway, is almost as big as our living room and dining room.
So what you're saying though is it would be a very, very hard sell for someone in the modern era.
It didn't sell. It only sold to that developer, and it almost bankrupted him.
Oh wow!
Because he had to blast the rock to create the massive houses that sit there now.
Yeah.
But he almost went bankrupt.
Wow.
And I was excited when it was bought because it could have been turned into something completely different.
I know, but they don't.
No. I'm like, oh, okay. It looks like they're replacing the big main great chimney. And then I came back a few days later, and then the whole house
was
torn down.
gone.
And I'm like,
Oh,
my
the
gosh.
heartbreaking.
All those memories gone.
Yeah. Well, they're not though. They're not. Remember that.
No, yeah, that's true.
It's
I
not
still
about
have
the
the photos.
stuff. It's not about the buildings.
I have the photos of the house.
Those memories
beautiful
are
grand
in your
house.
heart, and that's what matters.
And then another big house that we owned was that Korean guy who murdered his whole family.
Oh, that would be a very interesting deep dive for a true crime podcast. Because that was insane.
Yeah.
On King George Terrace.
King George Terrace. So this guy got PO'd with his wife, and he murdered his wife and his 6-year-old son and the grandparents.
Yeah. Well, and then
he
killed
himself
in that house. And you lived there at one point.
Yeah, 1981.
Nice job, freak.
I have an interesting set of houses I've lived in.
You do. Hopefully this next...
Killarney Drive was a nightmare.
Yeah.
There's the King George Terrace home.
We've had weird ghosts in this house.
Yes, this house has had weird stuff. Well,
maybe
it's because
you.
Well, you know what? When we were on the other side,
the
it
TV
responded to me immediately.
Yeah, that's true. So there you go.
Who knows?
Well,
I have a magnet for these things. I don't know. It's weird.
It is weird. We have had a great discussion about houses and ghosts and when they stick around and when they don't.
Yeah.
So we're very grateful for that. We're also grateful for something else.
Yeah, our patrons.
We love you, and we love that you stick with us. And I really hope you're enjoying our ghost stories we have heard. We recorded some more of those this past weekend, so they'll be coming up in the future.
Yeah. We put them in there so that they're ready to go, because there might be other changes happening in our future as well.
Which we will fill you in on as soon as we know.
Yeah, the moment we know, you will know.
As soon as there's some lockdown facts, we will let you know. But until then, we want to give a great big thank you to Robin,
Amos,
Maria,
Gina,
Elise,
Sharon,
Dawn,
Adam,
Bryce,
Sherry,
Brooks,
Marion,
Kathleen,
Alexa,
Debbie,
Jackie,
Charlotte,
Julie,
Ruth,
Rebecca,
Mary Frances,
Cassie,
Gina and Victoria,
Sandy,
Christopher,
David,
Ashley,
Jeremiah,
Mamere,
Elizabeth,
Jules,
Sam,
BB Nix,
Melinda,
Jordan,
Tammy,
James,
Taya,
Evan,
Arwen,
Steve,
Kyle and Charlotte,
Catherine,
Myri,
Christy,
Lydia,
and
Mary
Frances.
So yeah, I apologize for badgering that. He moves the screen while I'm trying to read, but he stops the screen as he's reading. So
I'm so sorry. And it's a little bit of a blurry weirdness mess. I'm sorry. So yes, thank you so much to all of our friends and people who have supported us. We are so grateful. And of course, you can always find us on Instagram, Ghosts and Bears. You can find us on Facebook, Ghosts and Bears page, hang out there. And of course, if you want to be a supporter of the show and get some extra cool merch, you can always
loves merch. Head
over to our Patreon page and become a patron, and we'd love to have you. You also get the Ghost Stories We Have Heard, which is our little mini shows we drop every week when there isn't an episode. So
we drive around and talk about ghost stories.
We do.
And sometimes you hear me honking.
Almost always.
Because I'm ridiculous.
Do you want, I know you're itching to do this. Do you just want to talk about the 2 cars we drove yesterday?
Oh my God.
I knew you would. Just go.
The brand spanking new Prius. I love it. Ian isn't a big fan.
Disappointed.
It's smaller.
It's like a dustbuster.
That is.
I didn't like the angle of the windshield.
Remember the Dustbuster minivans from the early 90s from GM.
Mm-hmm.
The windshield rake is extremely steep.
It's like being in a Concorde.
Yeah, it's stunning. I loved it, but Ian didn't. It's kind of tight.
It's tight. It's tight in the car. It's not as comfortable.
Is this recording?
Yeah, absolutely. It's recording.
I just wanted to make sure because it looks like it's overlapping something.
No, it's all good.
Okay. So anyways, and then we drove the brand new Toyota Crown,
which no one's ever heard of, but I
do like
quite an exceptional automobile, actually.
It is powerful, it is fast, it is comfortable, and she flies. We drove the
Crown, it was a hybrid
Crown Platinum.
Yes.
So that one has what's called the Hybrid Max drive system, all-wheel drive, and man, it is. I got it down to a pretty amazing fuel economy, but it has mega power.
One thing we were impressed with, the Self-driving technology is, I think, number 3 in this, 3.0.
Yeah.
And it is, I have to admit,
It is,
it's exceptional.
Yeah, we've had self-driving cars for a while now, and they're all a bit.
They work.
You'll hear if you read about them, they have kind of a rubber banding effect. They kind of like boom, 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 boom. They'll lane trace, and they'll kind of slightly go left, right when they're this brand new self-driving technology from Toyota. Holy smokes!
Yeah,
the Prius blew me away. It started driving by itself even while I was driving. I didn't engage it. And
I looked it up and we found out why. It's got a lane tracer and a brake assist thing, even when it's not on.
Yeah, even when it's not on.
Could bother some people.
It started steering for me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what? Whoa.
But it did it right.
And but the thing was, it was a very natural feeling steering.
Yeah, you never felt like a computer or something else was steering the car.
No.
It was very intuitive. I really liked it.
It was smooth.
Yeah.
And we also have a brand spanking new Toyota Corolla that just landed from Japan. It's a hybrid sports car, XSE, all-wheel drive.
So we'll see which cars get sacrificed for the great god of Toyota.
Yeah. So that one actually just arrived. You might have seen my Facebook post with the blue one with the preview to come.
You already posted that.
No. Remember a few weeks ago I posted.
Yes, you said this
is a preview
like
of what's
ours.
to come.
Yes,
it is exactly the same.
Right.
But they wouldn't sell that one.
No one cares.
No, it's a Corolla, yes, but the XSE all-wheel drive hybrid is quite a
big news in our house.
Yeah, but the thing is, it also, unlike our last Corolla hybrid, has the new driving tech, the Safety Sense 3,
which I like.
Which blows me away.
So with this being my birthday on Friday, does that mean the car is my birthday present?
I guess so. I guess I get to drive the pedestrian Prius. It's funny, the used market is just so off.
Well, it's because of supply and demand.
we bought a brand new Prius September 29th. We traded in for a brand new Prius, and the dealership pays us. They paid us. So ridiculous.
I know, it's crazy. And it's all about manufactured recommended price and then used car prices. So the world is turned upside down, and we're still kind of figuring all that out. And even now, I had a friend who needed to go buy a new dishwasher, and they're like, yeah, we can get you one in a year.
Oh my gosh.
And she's just like, what? But we're just not used to that. We're used to it's that whole supply chain thing, and now that supply chain is broken.
Yeah, we've been waiting for this Corolla for quite a while now.
Over a year.
Yeah. It's literally just landed today.
So there we go.
From Japan. I'm kind of excited. And it's
He's very excited.
I like blue.
Oh, you're so goofy.
It's a blue car.
We want to thank you all for sticking with us, and thank you for joining us for this episode of Ghosts and Bears.
And hopefully we'll be on the road to get more ghost stories soon. And hopefully not snowed out of
out of Mount Shasta, exactly. And we hope that someday soon we get to see you. So remember, if you're talking about podcasts and someone says, well, do you have a good podcast for me? You can say, yes, I do.
Yeah.
I know these two gay guys who have this podcast. You should hear about it. Ghosts in History. It's all the thing. We're the only podcast that gives you the actual ghost stories.
With the actual history.
From the actual place, or near it, or from it, or near it, or by it, or something.
Yeah.
So please check it out. And hopefully one day soon, that place
will be with you.
Take care, you guys.
Enjoy. Bye.